They never warned you, not your father, not your friends, not the world that profits from your blindness, because the truth isn't pretty, it's strategic. Machiavelli didn't ignore love. He saw it as the battlefield where most men surrender their power, smiling. And when a man chooses the wrong woman, history doesn't punish him with noise. It punishes him with slow, silent ruin. This video isn't about women. It's about the decisions that dismantle men. The ones made under the spell of beauty, guilt, validation, and the ache to be seen. You didn't lose your strength. You outsourced it, and she didn't betray you. She revealed the part of you that never had a spine to begin with. Because most men don't fall in love. They fall into memory, into old wounds dressed in perfume. She wasn't your muse. She was your test. And if you don't learn to see clearly, not kindly, not romantically, but strategically, then what you call love will keep becoming your downfall. No one talks about this, but they will after this. He kept asking why she left. But the real question, the one that keeps him up at 2 a.m., was why he stayed, why he bent, shrank and burned just to be a flicker in her storm. She never truly chose him. She chose his ache, and he mistook that ache for love. He wasn't addicted to her. He was addicted to proving he mattered, like a gambler watching the wheel spin, hoping this time it lands on worth. The house always wins, but the hope that keeps men loyal, not to her, to the wound she represented. She gave nothing, but he gave everything. Silence, pride, dignity, sleep. Not because he was weak, but because inside him, a boy still believed love could resurrect the man he abandoned. The ghost of that boy still knocks on the walls of his ribcage. Intermittent affection is a psychological weapon. It's not love. It's a slot machine of emotional survival. And the chaos feels like home because it echoes the unpredictability of childhood. You call it passion, but it's a loop, a cortisol dopamine hangover that smells like purpose but tastes like quicksand. Machiavelli wouldn't have pitied you. He would have said, "You built on mud." Validation is not intimacy. Praise is not presence. She wasn't mystery. She was a mirror of your avoidance. And you kissed the mirror like it was a mouth. He didn't stay because he was blind. He stayed because the pain was familiar, sacred even. The silence after her texts. It wasn't rejection. It was the same silence he felt when he cried alone as a boy, unheard, and still waiting to be chosen. He didn't want her. Not really. He wanted the version of himself he believed would be real, if she loved him. That illusion has a name. Self-abandonment, and it always wears her perfume. He fed a ghost and called it love. Most men chase what already left, because somewhere in them they believe suffering is proof of devotion. But what if the real proof is in walking away? Not loudly, not bitterly, just enough to never feed illusions again. She told him he was strong, and he became a statue, still, admired, motionless. From that day, he stopped being a man and became a mirror, not of truth, but of what she needed to see. And when her gaze turned cold, he shattered with it. The moment she praised his resilience, he made it his religion. He wore it like armor, and forgot it was just a costume. That compliment didn't lift him, it caged him, because now, any crack in that image felt like betrayal, not of her, but of the identity he built on her words. It wasn't flattery, it was hypnosis. The halo effect, when admiration is mistaken for truth. He believed he was special, not because he felt it, but because someone finally said he was. Machiavelli would have warned him. Never let perception become your prison. A man who lets others define him will be ruled by their silence. And their silence will always come, especially when you need it most. He didn't chase love. He chased the echo of that compliment. Every act of kindness became performance. Every success, a desperate audition for praise. He stopped living. He started acting. He thought he was building confidence. But what he built was dependence. Her approval became oxygen, and when she withheld it, he mistook suffocation for heartbreak. Every time he looked in the mirror, he saw her words, not himself. The scar wasn't what she said. It was what he gave up to keep hearing it, his own reflection. She didn't hold him. She held his leash, and he mistook the tug for affection. Because in a world where men are only celebrated for utility, he became useful and called it love. But love that needs you broken isn't love, it's design. He learned young, be charming, be good, be pleasing, or be invisible. So he became a master of the mask. Every joke, every touch, every gesture a transaction. Not for love, for safety, because truth never felt safe. Only performance did. He didn't seduce because he wanted pleasure. He seduced because it was the only language he thought love understood. The wounded boy became a skilled performer, not because he wanted applause, but because silence used to mean abandonment. She didn't fall for him. She fell for the script he perfected. But that script was a lie. He was never at peace, just well rehearsed, and every laugh she gave was a receipt for his authenticity. It's the old curse, performance-based love. Childhood taught him affection had to be earned, so he kept earning, charming, proving, until he forgot how to simply exist. No stillness, no surrender, just the daily hustle of emotional survival. Machiavelli warned, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." But he chose neither. He chose to be tolerated, seduced into softness, then punished for lacking spine. He forgot that peace earned through surrender is never peace. It's obedience. She didn't respect him. She used his need to be liked as a map, to manipulate, to test, to extract. And when he failed to resist, she lost all desire. Respect doesn't come from smiles. It comes from self-possession. Attraction without boundaries is just self-mockery. He thought her affection was a reward, but it was just her saying, "I control the script now." And he kept reading his lines like a loyal actor in a dying play. He wore the mask so long it started charging rent, and every day he paid with truth, with stillness, with fire, until the man beneath forgot he ever existed, until one day the act collapsed and no one clapped. She adored him, but only when he was bleeding, not when he was clear, not when he said no, only when he collapsed in her arms like a wounded animal. Then she felt divine, not because of love, but because his ruin made her feel central. He thought that was intimacy, but it was just emotional codependency wrapped in perfume. She played savior, he played sacrificial lamb. Together, they called it love, but it was a trauma ritual. Every time he tried to rise, she flinched. Every time he set a boundary, she grew distant. His wholeness didn't fit her narrative. She needed him broken, so her story stayed intact. That's not affection, that's possession. Machiavelli once said, "Men forget the death of their father quicker than the loss of their inheritance." She mourned not his strength, but his emotional collapse, because it made her feel needed. The more he tried to rebuild, the more she subtly tore the scaffolding down. He mistook attention for affection, but pain was the only language they spoke fluently. She didn't love his silence. She loved the sob between the words. He didn't notice that the only time she truly saw him was when he was falling apart. She kissed his wounds like they were altars, but when he stopped bleeding, she stopped praying. Not because he healed, but because she had nothing left to fix. And some people confuse healing you with holding you down. Your pain was never sacred to her. It was narrative fuel, proof that she mattered, because a strong man doesn't orbit need. But a broken one, that's gravity she can manage. And the moment he dared to ask for something more than comfort, more than rescue, she vanished. Not loudly, just enough to make him question his sanity. And that's when he finally understood. She didn't love his soul, just his scars. He called it devotion, but what it really was withdrawal. Every argument, every silence, every kiss after chaos, it wasn't healing. It was a hit, a dose of relief from the storm he refused to leave. She wasn't his partner, she was his supplier. And like every addict, he defended the thing that was slowly killing him. Because when you're starving for meaning, even poison tastes holy. That wasn't love. That was a cortisol dopamine loop dressed as a relationship. Nietzsche warned, "He who cannot obey himself will be commanded." And that's what happened. He obeyed the chemical warfare inside his own chest. Not because he didn't see the red flags, but because the chaos felt like home. He mistook familiarity for destiny and repetition for commitment. Every cycle of rupture and repair just deepened the wound. She wasn't his calm, she was his trigger, but he labeled it passion to avoid calling it pain. Breaking up didn't hurt because it ended. It hurt because it stopped the supply. Addiction doesn't mourn the object, it mourns the illusion of comfort. He didn't miss her. He missed the numbness. He kept coming back, telling himself she needed him. But it wasn't about her. It was about the war inside him, the one where guilt wore a halo and silence passed for peace. Obsession isn't about excess, it's about emptiness. He didn't crave her presence, he feared his own. So he chased the noise of her to drown the silence of himself. Because absence doesn't echo, it screams. He wasn't loyal. He was lost in a theater of neurochemistry. A man who confuses chaos with connection will always call pain a soulmate. But love without sanity isn't loyalty. It's self-neglect. And now he knows. What he thought was love was just a hangover. He said she inspired him, but what she really did was reflect the pieces he hadn't claimed. She wasn't his muse. She was his unfinished business. The chaos he called beauty was just the shape of his inner fracture. And when she smiled, it looked like salvation. But it was only a signal. Her darkness wasn't exotic. It was familiar. Because she embodied everything he denied in himself: rage, seduction, wildness, defiance. He wasn't in love. He was hypnotized by a reflection of his disowned soul. Jung called it projective identification, seeing what you're missing in someone else and calling it magic. But magic without self-awareness is just madness. He gave her power not because she earned it, but because he forgot he ever had it. Machiavelli would have seen the irony. The man who seeks meaning in a woman's chaos is always at war with his own structure. She didn't reveal his fire, she just exposed his confusion. And still, he wrote poems about the burn. She wasn't mystery, she was a test. Every moment she kept him guessing was a mirror saying, "This is how far you've drifted from yourself." But instead of looking inward, he chased the mirage. He couldn't let go, not because of love, but because she held the key to a question he refused to answer. Why do I need her to feel alive? The answer was buried beneath old guilt, shame dressed as desire, and the myth of redemption through romance. She was a mask, a beautiful mask stretched over grief he never buried, and every time he tried to leave, it wasn't her that pulled him back. It was the part of himself that still believed his brokenness needed to be seen by someone else to be real. The muse he chased was never her. It was the man he could have become if he had faced the abyss instead of romanticizing it. She wasn't his fire. She was the smoke rising from the place he hadn't healed. And now he sees the mirror, not the muse. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. He didn't yell, he apologized for wanting respect, for needing peace, for drawing lines in the sand only to watch the tide erase them with her smile. But inside something was screaming, not at her, at himself. The guilt was heavy, but it wasn't clean. It was the kind that hides a secret rage, a fire dressed in obedience, a storm trapped behind clenched teeth. He thought he was noble. He was just repressed. Machiavelli once wrote, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." But he kept every promise to her. to the version of him she approved of. He never realized he was breaking the oldest promise, the one he made to himself. She called him kind, and he became compliant, not because he lacked spine, but because his shame was louder than his anger. That's the cruelty of unprocessed guilt. It rewrites who you're allowed to be. He wasn't at peace. He was censored. Every request he swallowed turned into a quiet resentment. Every "it's fine" buried a truth, until he looked calm on the surface and hollow underneath. He didn't lose her. He lost his right to be whole. He thought guilt was integrity, but it was really fear. Fear of being abandoned for showing a spine instead of a wound. The men who rage silently are often the ones who love the loudest. And when that love goes unreturned, they punish themselves. That punishment has a name: guilt. Not because they did wrong, but because they didn't leave when they were first disrespected. Guilt isn't nobility. It's a cage with golden bars. And every time he forgave without change, every time he minimized his needs for the sake of keeping the peace, he chained himself deeper to the illusion that her comfort mattered more than his truth. He wasn't taught to be a man. He was trained to be useful, smile, solve, serve, and disappear before his pain became inconvenient. So he became what the world could tolerate, not what he truly was. He showed up, paid bills, protected, but no one ever asked if he felt real. They praised his function, not his soul, and somewhere between applause and exhaustion, he forgot there was a difference. What people called strong was just hyper-functionality, a defense mechanism with a time card. He performed so well, even he started believing the role, until silence caught him alone, and the script fell apart. Machiavelli warned, "Power diluted is power lost." But he diluted himself in every relationship. He became agreeable instead of clear, available instead of sovereign. She didn't betray him. He outsourced his edge. He confused approval with power, so he kept dancing for it. From women, bosses, strangers, he didn't lead, he performed. And every performance cost him presence. He was everywhere, except in himself. He thought being chosen meant being enough, but it only meant he was useful to someone else's need. That's the heartbreak no one names, realizing you were never truly seen, only used politely, until your function failed, and so did their affection. The deeper tragedy? He stopped whispering truth to himself just to be heard by others, and the louder he spoke in service to others, the more his own inner voice faded. Masculinity became noise, not presence. His value was never in the act, it was in the silence before it, the stillness that doesn't need validation to exist. Now he doesn't perform. He returns, not to applause, but to himself. So now you know. It wasn't love that broke you. It was the role you played to be loved. She didn't destroy your masculinity. You traded it for approval, for silence, for a seat at a table that asked you to shrink. But here's the question that remains. What would happen if you stopped performing and started protecting the man beneath the mask? What would your life look like if you chose presence over persuasion? If you guarded your soul like a kingdom and made your absence more powerful than your sacrifice? You've been orbiting her gaze for too long. It's time to reclaim gravity. Because maybe, just maybe, what you were looking for in her was the man you were afraid to become without her. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and keep walking this brutal, beautiful path of self-reclamation. You're not alone, but you must be willing to walk alone if you're ever going to be free. If this opened your eyes, wait until you hear what Carl Jung discovered about the feminine. Not the romanticized version, but the force that seduces, devours, and defines the men who never face their own soul. The next chapter starts there.